Let me tell you something straight. If your life isn't where you want it to be, it's not the economy. It's not your parents. It's not your past. It's not your boss. It's you. And I'm not saying that to shame you, I'm saying it to free you. Because the moment you stop blaming, the moment you stop pointing fingers, is the moment you get your power back. See, excuses feel good. They protect your ego. They help you sleep at night. But excuses will also steal your destiny. You want a better life? Then you've got to take full ownership of your habits, your attitude, your effort, and your results. Nobody owes you motivation. Nobody owes you success. Nobody owes you understanding. Life said, show me the work. You can't keep saying a $1 while avoiding day one. You can't keep praying for opportunity while refusing preparation. You can't keep asking for results without putting in results level effort. Ownership means this. If it didn't happen, I didn't do enough. If I failed, I didn't prepare enough. If I'm stuck, I stayed comfortable too long. That's hard to hear, but it's powerful to accept. Because once you own it, you can change it. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Success doesn't come to the most talented. It comes to the most consistent, to the people who show up when it's boring, when it's uncomfortable, when nobody is clapping. You say you want it. Then your actions better match your mouth. Read when others scroll, train when others rest, build when others complain. And let me be clear, taking ownership doesn't mean you won't struggle. It means you stop using struggle as an excuse to quit. Your past might explain you, but it does not define you. Your circumstances might slow you down, but they don't get the final say. The moment you say, yeah, this is my life, and I'm responsible for it, is the moment you stop surviving and start leading. So no more excuses. No more blaming. No more waiting. Decide today, I'm taking full ownership. I'm doing the work, and I'm not letting my potential die unused. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't reward intentions. It rewards execution. Now, go earn it. That ownership equals power. That statement sounds simple, but living it is one of the hardest and most transformative things a person can ever do. The moment you take ownership of your life, everything changes. Not because your circumstances magically improve, not because people suddenly support you, and not because the world becomes fair, but because you stop giving your power away. Blame is easy, responsibility is heavy. And most people choose easy, even when it costs them everything they could have been. When you blame someone else, you are quietly saying, you control my future. When you blame your parents, your boss, your partner, the system, or your past, you're handing them the steering wheel to your life and hoping they drive you somewhere better. That's not strength. That's surrender. Ownership is the opposite of surrender. Ownership says, no matter what happened, no matter what I didn't get, no matter what I went through, I am still responsible for what happens next. That mindset is uncomfortable because it removes your favorite hiding place. You can no longer say, if only. You can no longer wait for someone else to fix it. You have to look in the mirror and admit, this is on me. And that admission is painful at first. It hits your ego. It challenges your self-image. It forces you to confront decisions you rather ignore. But buried inside that discomfort is freedom. Because if it's on you, then you can change it. Blame feels powerful in a moment. It lets you vent. It lets you feel justified. It gives you a temporary sense of relief. But blame is deceptive. It robs you slowly. Every time you blame something outside yourself, you weaken your ability to act. You tell your mind, I'm stuck. And once you believe you're stuck, you stop trying. You stop pushing. You stop growing. Ownership does the opposite. Ownership activates you. It wakes you up. It forces you into action because there is no one else left to rely on. When you own your results, good or bad, you stop being the victim of circumstances and start becoming a problem solver. Think about it. Two people can face the exact same situation and walk away with completely different outcomes. One says, this isn't fair. I didn't deserve this. The other says that this happened. Now, what am I going to do about it? The difference isn't intelligence, talent, or luck. The difference is ownership. Ownership doesn't deny hardship. It doesn't pretend life is fair. It doesn't ignore injustice, trauma, or obstacles. What it does is refuse to let those things become excuses for stagnation. You can acknowledge pain without letting it define you. You can recognize disadvantages without surrendering your agency. When you fully own your life, you stop waiting for permission. You stop asking who's going to save you. You stop hoping someone notices your potential. You understand that nobody is coming, and that realization doesn't scare you anymore. It empowers you. Power comes from knowing that your actions matter, that what you do today shapes what happens tomorrow, that your choices, even small ones, compound over time. Ownership turns your daily behavior into a tool instead of a routine. You begin to ask better questions. What am I doing consistently? What am I avoiding? What habits are holding me back? What skills do I need to build? These are dangerous questions because they demand honesty, and honesty strips away comfort. Comfort tells you you're doing fine. Ownership asks you if a fine is enough. Most people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they outsource responsibility. They wait for motivation instead of building discipline. They wait for clarity instead of taking action. They wait for confidence instead of doing the work that creates it. Ownership teaches you that confidence is earned, not granted. You don't wake up confident. You become confident by keeping promises to yourself. You don't become powerful by thinking differently. You become powerful by acting differently, even when you don't feel ready. When you stop blaming, you also stop resenting. Resentment is heavy. It drains energy. It drains energy. It keeps you mentally trapped in the past. Ownership releases that weight. Instead of asking to me, you ask, how can I use this? That shift alone can change the trajectory of your life. Ownership also removes entitlement. You stop believing you deserve results without effort. You stop expecting recognition without consistency. You stop wanting rewards without sacrifice. And while that might sound harsh, it actually makes life simpler. Clear rules, clear expectation. You know exactly what's required. Show up, do the work, learn from failure, repeat. Failure feels different when you own it. It no longer defines you, informs you. Instead of crushing your confidence, it sharpens it. You stop seeing failure as proof that you can't and start seeing it as feedback on what to adjust. Ownership also strengthens resilience. When life knocks you down, blaming keeps you on the ground. Ownership gets you back up faster because you're focused on solutions, not stories. You don't waste energy replaying what should have happened. You focus on what still can. And here's the truth most people avoid. No one is coming to hand you the life you want. No one is obligated to understand your struggle. No one is required to compensate you for your pain. That reality can either break you or build you. Ownership turns it into fuel. When you fully own your life, you become intentional. You stop drifting. You stop reacting to everything around you. You begin designing your days instead of surviving them. You realize that success isn't one big moment. It's thousands of small decisions made consistently in the same direction. Ownership also exposes gaps. You start seeing where you've been lazy, unfocused, or undisciplined. That's uncomfortable, but necessary. Growth doesn't come from pretending. It comes from confronting truth and responding with action. And ownership isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily choice. Every morning you decide, am I going to own today? Or am I going to explain today away? Am I going to do what needs to be done? Or am I going to justify why I didn't? Blame asks, who failed me? Ownership asks, what's my next move? That question is power because it puts the future back in your hands. When you take full ownership, you stop needing excuses. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. You realize that power was never outside of you. It was just buried under blame. And once you experience that power, you don't want to give it back. Excuses are comfort in disguise. They don't show up looking dangerous. They don't announce themselves as the thing that will slowly ruin your potential. They show up as logic, as reason, as explanations that sound reasonable enough to accept and familiar enough to repeat. And that's what makes them so powerful and so destructive. An excuse is anything you tell yourself that allows you to stay the same while convincing yourself you tried. It's the story you lean on when effort feels uncomfortable, when discipline feels heavy, and when growth demands more than you're willing to give in that moment. Excuses don't stop you loudly. They lull you quietly. Comfort is seductive. It speaks in a calm voice. It tells you there's no rush, that tomorrow is fine, that you deserve rest even when you haven't earned progress. Excuses wrap that comfort in justification so you don't feel guilty staying where you are. They make stagnation feel responsible. Most people don't realize how often they negotiate with themselves. They wake up with intentions, but the moment discomfort shows up, the excuses start forming. I'll do it later. I'm not in the right mood. I need to be more prepared. Or this just isn't the right time. Each one sounds harmless, but stacked over time, they build a wall between who you are and who you could be. Excuses protect your ego. They prevent you from having to face the possibility that the problem isn't lack of opportunity, but lack of commitment. It's easier to say circumstances held you back than to admit you held yourself back. Excuses let you avoid that uncomfortable truth. And the danger isn't that excuses make you feel bad. The danger is that they make you feel okay. Okay with inconsistency, okay with mediocrity, okay with wasting time you'll never get back. They soften the disappointment just enough that you don't change. Comfort never demands growth. It never pushes you to improve. It never asks you to stretch beyond what you already know. Comfort wants you safe, predictable, and unchallenged. Excuses are comfort's language. They translate fear into reason and resistance into logic. Fear often hides behind excuses. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of being seen trying and still coming up short. So instead of facing fear directly, people dress it up as practicality. They call it patience. They call it realism. They call it waiting for the right moment. But deep down, it's avoidance. Excuses also distort time. They make you believe you have more of it than you do. They tell you there's always another chance, another opportunity. But time doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about your reasons. It moves forward whether you move with it or not. Every excuse delays action. And every delay counts. And every delay compounds. One skipped workout becomes a month of inconsistency. One avoided conversation becomes a year of resentment. One postponed decision becomes a missed opportunity. Excuses don't steal your future all at once. They take it in small, unnoticeable pieces. The most dangerous excuses are the ones that sound responsible. I'm focusing on stability first. I need to handle other priorities. I'm being realistic. These phrases can be true in some moments, but when used repeatedly, they become shields against risk and effort. They allow you to feel mature while avoiding growth. Excuses also create patterns. Once you allow one, it becomes easier to allow the next. Your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. Your standards slowly lower. What once felt unacceptable starts to feel normal. You don't fall into complacency. You ease into it. And the longer you live with excuses, the harder it becomes to tell the difference between what you can do and what you won't do. That confusion is costly. It blurs accountability. It weakens self-trust. You stop believing your own promises because it's taught you that you won't keep them. Comfort feels good now. Comfort feels good now, but it charges interest later. The price shows up as regret, as frustration, as the quiet question you ask yourself late at night. Why didn't I start earlier? That question doesn't come from lack of information. It comes from knowing you chose comfort over courage too many times. Excuses also isolate you. They keep you stuck in your own explanations instead of open to feedback. When someone challenges you, excuses rise up to defend your position. They block growth by turning every suggestion into a threat. You stop learning because learning requires admitting you don't have it all figured out. And here's the part most people miss. Excuses don't disappear when you succeed. They just change form. At every new level, comfort tries to reassert itself. It whispers that you've done enough, that you deserve to slow down. That pushing further is unnecessary. Growth requires constant awareness because excuses evolve. The truth is, discomfort is not the enemy. Avoiding discomfort is. Growth lives in tension. Progress lives in repetition. Discipline lives beyond motivation. Excuses pull you away from all three. When you remove excuses, you remove the cushion. You feel the weight of responsibility more clearly. And yes, that weight can feel overwhelming at first, but it also sharpens focus. Without excuses, your options become clearer. Act or don't, try or quit, adjust or stay stuck. Excuses blur reality. Ownership clarifies it. People often wait to feel ready before they act. That feeling rarely comes. Readiness is built through movement, not thought. No, Excuses convince you that preparation must come before action, when in reality, action is what creates preparation. Comfort tells you to protect your energy. Growth tells you to invest it. Excuses side with comfort every time. They argue for rest before effort, relief before discipline, ease before excellence. You can always trace stagnation back to a pattern of excuses. Not one big excuse, but many small ones repeated consistently. Consistency works both ways. What you repeatedly allow becomes who you are. Breaking the habit of excuses requires honesty, brutal honesty. You have to catch yourself mid-justification and ask whether the reason you're giving is true or just convenient. That question alone can change behavior. Excuses thrive in private. They lose power when exposed. When you say them out loud, they often sound weaker than they did in your head. Accountability disrupts comfort. Structure challenges avoidance. Action dismantles excuses faster than motivation ever could. Discomfort doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Often it means you're doing something new. Excuses interpret discomfort as danger. Growth recognizes it as a signal. You don't need a perfect plan to start. You don't need ideal conditions. You don't need confidence. Those are all excuses disguised as requirements. What you need is willingness. The willingness to be uncomfortable without quitting. Every time you choose action over excuse, you strengthen your self-respect. Every time you push through resistance, you weaken the voice of comfort. Over time, that voice gets quiet. Not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. Excuses promise safety, but deliver regret. Effort promises discomfort, but delivers progress. You always pay a price, either now or later. Comfort convinces you to postpone the cost, but the bill always comes due. When you stop making excuses, you stop lying to yourself. And that honesty, while uncomfortable, is liberating. You no longer have to defend your inaction. You no longer have to justify your results. You simply deal with reality as it is. Excuses want you comfortable. Growth wants you capable. And capability is built through doing what's hard, even when it would be easier to explain why you didn't. The hardest part isn't recognizing excuses, it's letting them go. Because once you do, you're left with responsibility. And responsibility demands action. But that action is where change lives. Comfort keeps you where you are. Discomfort moves you forward. Excuses are the gatekeepers of comfort. And the moment you stop listening to them, your life starts to expand. Results reflect habits, not hopes. That truth cuts through a lot of comforting lies people tell themselves. Hope feels productive. It feels optimistic. It feels like you're mystic. It feels like you're moving forward even when you're standing still. But hope without action is just a wish wearing nicer clothes. It doesn't change outcomes. Habits do. Most people don't lack dreams. They lack systems. They know what they want. They can describe the life they imagine in detail. They can talk about their goals with passion. But when you look at their daily routine, their mornings, their evening, their choices when no one is watching, you see a disconnect. The life they want doesn't match the life they practice. Habits are quiet. They don't announce themselves. They don't feel heroic. They happen whether you're inspired or not. And that's exactly why they matter. Results don't come from what you do once in a burst of motivation. They come from what you do repeatedly, even when you're tired, bored, stressed, or unsure. Hope is emotional. Habits are mechanical. Hope fluctuates with mood. Habits function regardless of mood. If your progress depends on how you feel, your results will always be inconsistent. Habits remove emotion from execution. They turn growth into a process instead of a personality trait. People often overestimate what they can do in a short time and underestimate what they can do over a long time. That's because habits compound. Small actions done consistently create momentum that feels invisible at first. Then one day the results seem sudden, but they weren't sudden. They were earned quietly. You don't wake up one day disciplined. You build discipline by doing small, uncomfortable things consistently. You don't become skilled by wanting skill. You become skilled by wanting skill. You become skilled by showing up to practice when progress feels slow. Habits don't care about your intentions. They only respond to repetition. Hopes are easy to protect. When they don't come true, you can say you just didn't get the chance. Habits are harder to defend. They expose what you actually prioritize. You may hope to be healthy, but your eating and movement habits tell the truth. You may hope to be successful, But your time management habits reveal your real commitment. There's a reason people cling to hope. It doesn't demand change. Habits do. Habits require you to restructure your day, your environment, your triggers, and your responses. They require planning, they require sacrifice. And most importantly, they require consistency long after the excitement fades. Motivation gets credit, but habits do the work. Motivation might get you started. Habits keep you going. If you rely on motivation alone, you'll stop when motivation dips, which it always does. Habits carry you through the dips. Your life right now is the result of your hacks, not your potential, not your intention, not your circumstances alone, your habits. That can be uncomfortable to accept because it removes excuses, but it's also empowering because it gives you a clear path forward. Change the habits, and the results change. People often say they're waiting for clarity before acting, but clarity comes from action. Habits create clarity because they generate feedback. When you act consistently, you learn what works and what doesn't. When you only think, you stay stuck in theory. Habits also shape identity. You don't just get results, you become someone different. When you repeatedly act in alignment with a goal, your self-image shifts. Stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. That identity shift reinforces the habit, creating a loop. Hopes are fragile. One setback can crush them. Habits are resilient. They allow you to miss a day without quitting entirely. They give you structure to return to when things go wrong. A person with strong habits doesn't panic at failure. They adjust and continue. Consistency beats intensity. A little every day outperforms a lot once in a while. Intense bursts feel impressive, but they're hard to sustain. Habits favor sustainability over spectacle. They don't care about being noticed. They care about being repeated. Most people don't fail because they choose the wrong goal. They fail because their habits don't support the goal they chose. They want change without changing what they do daily. That's not how progress works. Habits operate even when you're not paying attention. That's why building the right ones matters so much. If you don't design your habits, they will be designed for you by convenience, by environment, by social pressure. And those default habits rarely lead where you want to go. Your environment plays a massive role in habit formation. What you see was easy. What's nearby? These things shape behavior more than willpower does. Hope ignores environment. Habits account for it. They work with reality instead of against it. People often shame themselves for lacking discipline when the real issue is lack of structure. Habits are structure. They reduce decision fatigue. They make the right action the default action. When behavior is automatic, you don't have to negotiate with yourself every day. Hope asks, so what if? Habits ask, what's next? One lives in imagination. The other lives in execution. Imagination is useful, but only if it leads to action. Otherwise, it becomes a substitute for progress. Results don't respond to passion alone. They respond to alignment. When your daily actions align with your long-term goals, progress becomes inevitable. When they don't, no amount of hope will bridge the gap. People love to talk about breakthroughs, but breakthroughs are just a visible moment when habits finally outweigh resistance. Nobody sees the weeks, months, or years of repetition that make that moment possible. Habits also reveal patience. They force you to delay gratification. They teach you to value progress over praise. They train you to trust the process even when the outcome isn't immediate. That patience is skill, and like any skill, it's built through practice. When results don't show up quickly, hope tends to fade. Habits don't require immediate results to continue. They're sustained by commitment, not reward. Over time, the results catch up. Your habits are a vote for the person you're becoming. Every action reinforces a direction. One choice won't define you, but patterns will. Results are simply the scoreboard of those patterns. It's tempting to believe that once you feel confident, you'll act. In reality, action creates confidence. Habits create proof. Proof builds belief. Belief strengthens commitment. The cycle starts with doing, not hoping. Hope can inspire vision. Habits turn that vision into reality. Without habits, hope becomes frustrating because it highlights the gap between where you are and where you want to be without offering a bridge. That bridge is built one repetition at a time. When you focus on habits instead of outcomes, pressure decreases. You stop obsessing over timelines and start measuring success by consistency. That shift makes progress more sustainable because it's within your control. Results are lagging indicators. They show up after the work has been done. Habits are leading indicators. They predict what's coming. If you don't like your current results, look at your habits. Now you're luck. Most transformation stories sound dramatic in hindsight, but they're mundane up close. They're built on routine, schedules, checklists, and boring consistency. Habits don't look impressive in the moment. They look repetitive but repetition is what rewires behavior. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. That's not pessimism, it's realism. And realism is useful because it shows you where to focus. Hope tells you things will work out. Habits make sure they do. When you align your habits with your goals, results stop being mysterious. They become predictable. And predictability is power. Motivation is unreliable. Discipline is not. That true challenge is one of the most popular myths about success. The idea that you need to feel inspired before you act. Motivation feels powerful when it's present. It gives you energy, confidence, and momentum. But it's temporary. It rises and falls based on mood, environment, sleep, stress, and circumstances you don't control. Discipline, on the other hand, doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what needs to be done. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is intentional. Motivation depends on excitement. Discipline depends on commitment. When you rely on motivation, you tie your progress to something unstable. When you rely on discipline, you anchor progress to choice. Most people wait to feel motivated before they start. That waiting is costly. Motivation rarely shows up on command. It appears randomly, often after action has already begun. Discipline flips the order. You act first. Motivation may follow, or it may not. Either way, the work gets done. Motivation feels good, which is why people chase it. They watch videos, read quotes, listen to speeches, hoping to spark that feeling again. But motivation isn't fuel, it's a spark. A spark can start a fire, but it won't keep it burning. Discipline is the wood. Without it, the fire dies quickly. Discipline is built in quiet moments, in early mornings, in boring repetition, in choosing effort over ease when no one is watching. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels routine, and that's why it lasts. Motivation asks, do I feel like doing this today? Discipline asks, is this part of who I said I want to become? That question changes everything. It shifts the focus from comfort to identity. You're no longer negotiating with your mood, you're honoring a standard. People often confuse discipline with punishment. They think it means forcing yourself through misery. In reality, discipline is self-respect in action. It's choosing long-term benefits over short-term relief. It's protecting your future self from the consequences of inaction. Motivation is reactive. It responds to external stimuli, success, praise, novelty. Discipline is proactive. Creates results before there's anything to celebrate. That's why disciplined people appear lucky. They show up so consistently that opportunity eventually has no choice but to notice them. There will be days when you don't want to show up. Days when energy is low, confidence is shaken, and excuses feel convincing. Motivation won't save you on those days. Discipline will. It carries you through when emotions try to pull you back. Discipline also simplifies decision-making. When something is non-negotiable, you don't debate it. You don't ask whether you're in the mood, you just do it. That reduces mental friction. It frees up energy for execution instead of internal arguments. Motivation is loud and dramatic. Discipline is quiet and consistent. One looks impressive. The other produces results. People applaud motivation. They benefit from discipline. You don't become disciplined by feeling disciplined. You become disciplined by doing disciplined actions repeatedly, just like confidence. Discipline is built through proof. Each time you follow through, you reinforce your ability to trust yourself. That trust becomes momentum. Motivation fades quickly when progress is slow. Discipline doesn't require progress to continue. It requires commitment. That's why discipline is essential during the early stages of any goal, when results are invisible and doubt will tie. Discipline also protects you from self-sabotage. When emotions run high, discipline provides structure. It keeps you from quitting prematurely, overreacting to setbacks, or chasing distractions that feel good but lead nowhere. People often think discipline will limit their freedom. In reality, lack of discipline is what traps you. It keeps you dependent on mood, circumstances, and external validation. Discipline creates freedom by giving you control over your actions. Motivation is influenced by environment. Discipline shapes environment. Disciplined people design their surroundings to support their behavior. They remove friction from good habits and add friction to bad ones. They don't rely on willpower alone. Willpower is limited. Discipline is systematic. It's built into routine, schedules, and standards. When discipline is in place, you don't have to fight yourself every day. Motivation can start you, but it can't sustain. Discipline sustains progress when novelty wears off, and novelty always wears off. Discipline also teaches patience. It conditions you to act without immediate reward. That patience becomes a competitive advantage in a world addicted to instant gratification. While others quit because it's not fun anymore, disciplined people continue because it matters. There's a moment in every journey when motivation disappears. That moment separates those who talk from those who build. Discipline steps in when enthusiasm leaves. It keeps the promised motivation made. Discipline doesn't mean you never rest. It means you rest intentionally, not impulsively. It means recovery is part of the plan, not an excuse to stop. Discipline understands balance better than motivation ever could. Motivation reacts to success. Discipline creates it. Motivation celebrates results. Discipline earns them. People who wait for motivation are controlled by how they feel. People who rely on discipline are guided by who they choose to be. That difference shows up in outcomes over time. Discipline strengthens identity. Every follow-through becomes evidence. Evidence builds belief. Belief reinforces behavior. Over time, discipline becomes automatic. Not because it's easy, but because it's familiar. Motivation often disappears when things get hard. Discipline is most visible when things are hard. That's when it matters most. You don't need to be motivated to do what needs to be done. You need to be committed. Commitment lasts longer than emotion. Discipline is not about perfection. It's about persistence. It allows for mistakes without abandonment. It focuses on returning to the process, not punishing failure. Motivation wants excitement. Discipline wants progress. One chases feeling. The other builds results. In the long run, discipline is more compassionate than motivation. Motivation sets you up for emotional highs and lows. Discipline provides stability. It creates a rhythm you can rely on. You don't rise on days you feel inspired. You rise on days you show up anyway. Motivation is a visitor. Discipline is a resident. And the people who build extraordinary lives don't wait to feel ready. They train themselves to act regardless. Your past might explain you, but it does not define you. That distinction is one of the most important ideas a person can ever grasp, because so many lives are limited not by what happened, but by what people believe those events mean about who they are allowed to become. The past is powerful. It shapes your beliefs, your fears, your habits, and the stories you tell yourself. It leaves marks, some visible, some deeply internal. Experiences like failure, rejection, trauma, poverty, neglect, or missed opportunities don't just disappear with time. They influence how you see the world and how you see yourself. But influence is not destiny. Explanation is not permission. Understanding where you came from does not mean you are sentenced to stay there. Many people confuse explanation with identity. They say, this is just how I am, when what they really mean is, this is what I learned to be. The past taught you survival strategies. Some of them helped you once. Some of them kept you safe when you had limited options. But survival habits are not the same as growth habits. What protected you then may limit you now. The danger comes when you allow the past to become a ceiling instead of a reference point. When you turn history into a label, I'm bad with money. I'm not confident. I always fail. Other people like me don't succeed. These statements sound like facts, but they're interpretation. They are conclusions drawn from earlier chapters, not rules for the rest of the book. Your past can explain why certain things feel hard. It can explain why trust doesn't come easily, why discipline feels unfamiliar, why fear shows up quickly. but it does not get to decide what you practice next. It does not get to vote on your future unless you keep inviting it to. Many people unknowingly live in reaction to their past. They make decisions based on avoiding old pain rather than pursuing new growth. They stay small to avoid disappointment. They stay silent to avoid rejection. They stay comfortable to avoid failure. In doing so, they allow yesterday's wounds to control tomorrow's choices. The past is loud if you let it be. It replays memories, it reminds you of mistakes. It brings up moments of embarrassment or loss at the exact moment you're trying to move forward. But memory is not authority. Just because something happened does not mean it gets to lead. There's a difference between learning from the past and living in it. Learning uses the past as information. Living in it uses the past as identity. One empowers, the other traps. People often cling to the past because it's familiar. Even pain can feel safer than uncertainty. The known hurts of yesterday can feel more predictable than the unknown possibilities of tomorrow. So people return to old narratives, even when those narratives limit them. At least they know who they are in that story. Letting go of a defining past doesn't mean denying it. It means refusing to let it have the final word. You can acknowledge what happened without allowing it to become who you are. Your past includes things you did and things done to you. Both can carry weight. Guilt tells you that you are your mistakes. Shame tells you that you are your wounds. Neither is true. Mistakes are events. Wounds are experiences. Identity is something you choose through repetition. Change often feels uncomfortable because it threatens old identities. When you start acting differently, your past self pushes back. It says, isn't here we are. But growth always requires betraying an outdated version of yourself. The most dangerous phrase people repeat is, I've always been this way. That sentence turns habit into destiny. It freezes growth. It ignores the fact that every skill, belief, and behavior you had was learned, and anything learned can be. Your past may explain why you didn't know better. It may explain why you chose what you chose with the information and tools you had at the time. But now you have more awareness, and awareness changes responsibility. Once you know better, the question becomes what you're willing to practice next. People who redefine themselves don't erase their past. They contextualize it. They stop using it as a verdict and start using it as data. They ask, oh, what did this teach me? Instead of what does this say about me? Growth requires grieving certain versions of yourself. The one who didn't get the support they needed. The one who made choices out of fear. The one who believed they were incapable. You don't shame those versions. You thank them for surviving, and then you move forward. The past is static, it cannot change, but meaning is flexible. You can reinterpret experiences without denying them. What once felt like proof of inadequacy can become evidence of resilience. What once felt like failure can become training. Many people underestimate how much identity drives behavior. If you believe your past defines you, you will subconsciously act in ways that confirm that belief. You will sabotage progress. You will hesitate at opportunity, not because you lack ability, but because acting differently threatens the story you've been living in. Breaking free from the past requires repeated action that contradicts old beliefs. Not declarations, not affirmations alone, proof. Each time you show up differently, you weaken the authority of the past and strengthen a new identity. Your past can explain your starting point, but it doesn't dictate your direction. Two people can start from the same place and end up in completely different lives. The difference is not what happened to them. It's what they decided to do with what happened. People often wait until they feel healed and move forward. But healing often happens through movement, not before it. Action builds evidence that you are not stuck. That evidence changes belief. Belief changes behavior. Behavior changes outcomes. The past also lies by exaggerating permanence. It tells you that because something happened once or many times, it will always happen again. That's not true. That's pattern recognition without update. Patterns only continue if behavior does. You are not required to be loyal to your past self. Loyalty to growth sometimes means letting go of old excuses, old defenses, and old limitations. It means accepting that who you were was necessary, but not sufficient for who you want to become. The past explains why certain fears feel real, but it doesn't get to decide whether you act anyway. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to let fear write the script. When you stop letting the past define you, responsibility increases. That can feel heavy, but it's also empowering. You're no longer waiting for history to change. You're building something new with intention. Your future self is not created by rewriting the past, but by changing what you practice today. Identity is built forward, not backward. The past can inform wisdom, but it cannot predict growth. Growth is always a choice made in the present. And the moment you stop asking, what happened to me? And start asking, who am I becoming? You step out of history and into possibility. Consistency beats talent every time. That idea can feel uncomfortable, especially in a world that loves celebrating natural ability, intelligence, and giftedness. Talent is flashy. It's easy to notice. It makes for great stories. But talent alone is fragile. It depends on conditions being right. Consistency, on the other hand, is durable. It shows up regardless of circumstances. And over time, it outpaces talent in ways that are undeniable. Talent is potential. Consistency is execution. Potential is what could happen. Execution is what actually happened. The gap between those two is where most dreams die. Not because people weren't capable, but because they weren't consistent long enough for capability to turn into results. Talent often creates a false sense of security. When things come easily early on, there's less urgency to build habits, less pressure to develop discipline, and less tolerance for struggle. When difficulty eventually shows up, as it always does, talent alone doesn't know what to do with resistance. Consistency does. Consistency trains you to keep going when progress is slow. It builds patience. It teaches you how to work through boredom, frustration, and doubt. Talent doesn't prepare you for those moments. Consistency does, because it's built in them. Many talented people quit the first time they're not immediately good. They're not used to effort without reward. They interpret struggle as a sign that they're not meant for it. Consistent people interpret struggle as part of the process. That difference in interpretation determines who lasts. Consistency compounds. Small efforts repeated daily create momentum that talent alone can't match. You may not see the impact at first. In fact, for a long time, it might feel like nothing is happening. But consistency is working beneath the surface, strengthening skills, sharpening judgment, and building resilience. Talent shines early. Consistency wins late. The world is full of people who were once considered gifted but never fulfilled that promise. It's also full of people who were overlooked, underestimated, or average at the start and surpassed expectations through steady effort. What separated them wasn't brilliance. It was persistence. Consistency removes reliance on mood. You don't need to feel inspired. You don't need perfect conditions. You just need to show up and do the work you committed to doing. Over time, that reliability becomes a competitive advantage. Consistency also builds trust, both with yourself and with others. When you do what you say you're going to do repeatedly, you become dependable. Dependability opens doors. People trust consistent performers more than talented but unpredictable ones. Talent without consistency creates frustration. You know what you're capable of, but you don't produce at that level regularly. That gap breeds self-doubt and wasted potential. Consistency closes that gap by turning ability into output. Skill is not a gift, it's accumulated effort. The people we call innaturals are often the ones who practice quietly for years. We see the performance, not the repetition behind it. Consistency is invisible until it isn't. Consistency also reduces fear of failure. When effort is habitual, failure becomes part of the process, not a verdict. You try again tomorrow because tomorrow is already scheduled. That mindset removes drama from mistakes. Talent often depends on confidence. Consistency builds confidence. Every repetition becomes proof. Proof builds belief. Belief strengthens action. That cycle doesn't require talent, just commitment. Consistency teaches humility. You learn that progress is earned slowly. You stop expecting shortcuts. You respect the process. That respect keeps you grounded and focused. Talent can make you stand out once. Consistency makes you relevant over time. Consistency also protects against burnout. Talented people sometimes push too hard in short bursts, relying on intensity instead of rhythm. Consistency favors sustainability. Consistency favors sustainability. It's not about doing everything at once. It's about doing something regularly. When you're consistent, improvement becomes inevitable. You don't have to overthink growth. You just have to keep showing up. The work will teach you what to adjust. Consistency doesn't require confidence. It creates it. It doesn't require clarity. It builds it. It doesn't require perfection. It thrives on repetition. The most reliable path to excellence is not exceptional effort once, but reasonable effort done repeatedly. Consistency also democratizes success. Not everyone is born with the same advantages, but everyone can choose to show up. That choice repeated enough times changes outcomes. Talent might open a door. Consistency keeps it open. Consistency doesn't care about recognition. It works quietly. It doesn't need applause to continue. That independence makes it powerful. When consistency becomes part of your identity, success stops feeling accidental. You stop wondering if you'll fall off. You trust yourself to return to the work. Talent can be taken away by circumstance. Consistency adapts. It finds another way forward. Consistency teaches resilience. You learn how to keep going even when progress stalls. That resilience becomes more valuable than raw ability. People admire talent. They rely on consistency. Consistency builds momentum. Momentum makes effort easier over time. Talent alone doesn't create momentum. It needs structure to be effective. Consistency also sharpens judgment. Repetition exposes patterns. You learn what works and what doesn't. That learning accelerates growth. Consistency beats talent because it turns effort into inevitability, not overnight. Not dramatically, but reliably. And in the long run, reliability wins. Preparation creates opportunity. That idea runs counter to how many people think success works. People love the story of being in the right place at the right time, of sudden breakthroughs and lucky breaks. But what rarely gets told is what happened before that moment. The quiet, unglamorous preparation that made it possible for someone to recognize and seize the opportunity when it appeared. Opportunity is not random. It may look unexpected from the outside, but it favors those who are ready. When preparation is absent, opportunity can pass right in front of you and still be missed. Not because it wasn't real, but because you weren't equipped to act on it. Preparation is often misunderstood. People think it means waiting. It doesn't. Waiting is passive. Preparation is active. It's learning when no one is watching, practicing when there's no audience, building skills before there's demand. It's investing effort before there's reward. Most people want opportunity first and preparation second. They want the job, then they'll learn the skill. They want the platform, then they'll develop the message. They want the chance, then they'll get serious. That order almost never works. Opportunity doesn't wait for you to catch up. It goes to those who are already moving. Preparation sharpens awareness. When you've done the work, you notice openings others overlook. You hear conversations differently. You see patterns. You recognize when a door is cracked open because you understand what's on the other side. Unprepared people often mistake luck for opportunity. They think success is something you stumble into. Prepared people understand that opportunity is something you step into because you've been training for it, sometimes without knowing exactly when it would arrive. Preparation builds confidence, but not the loud kind. It builds quiet confidence, the kind rooted in competence. You're not hoping you can handle it. You know you can because you've already done the work in smaller, unseen ways. Opportunity takes readiness. When it shows up, it doesn't ask if you feel ready. It asks if you are ready. And readiness can't be faked. Pressure reveals preparation immediately. People often say they froze when the moment came. That freeze usually isn't fear. It's lack of preparation. When your body and mind don't know what to do, hesitation takes over. Preparation removes hesitation by making action familiar. Preparation also reduces anxiety. Anxiety thrives in uncertainty. When you prepare, uncertainty shrinks. You may still feel nervous, but you're not lost. You have a framework to rely on. Preparation is cumulative. It stacks over time. Each skill learned, each habit built, each lesson absorbed increases your capacity. You may not know exactly how you'll use it yet, but when opportunity arrives, those pieces connect. Many people underestimate how much preparation they need because they overestimate how forgiving opportunity will be. Most opportunities don't come with instructions or second chances. They expect competence immediately. Preparation is how you respect opportunity before it arrives. It's how you prove without an audience that you're serious about what you say you want. People who prepare don't complain about not being chosen as often. They focus on becoming undeniable. When preparation meets opportunity, selection becomes obvious. Preparation also protects you from being overwhelmed by success. Opportunity without preparation can be destructive. It can expose weaknesses, create pressure you can't manage, and lead to self-sabotage. Preparation gives you stability when things move fast. There's a reason people say stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Getting ready takes time. Opportunity rarely waits. Preparation turns opportunity into leverage. Instead of being grateful just to be there, you're able to contribute, add value, and grow. That's how one opportunity leads to another. Many people confuse preparation with perfection. They think they need to know everything before acting. That's not preparation, that's avoidance. Preparation is about being capable enough to start and adaptable enough to learn. Prepared people are comfortable being beginners because they've trained themselves to learn. They don't need certainty, they need direction. Preparation also reveals commitment. Anyone can say they want something. Few people prepare for it when there's no guarantee it will happen. That willingness to prepare without assurance separates serious people from hopeful ones. Opportunity often comes disguised as work. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up as responsibility, challenge, or inconvenience. Prepared people recognize it. Unprepared people avoid it. Preparation is not glamorous. It doesn't get applause. It doesn't go viral. It's repetitive, sometimes boring, and often lonely, but it builds a foundation strong enough to support growth. When people say someone was overnight success, they're usually ignoring years of preparation that made that night possible. Success looks sudden only to those who didn't see the process. Preparation also builds adaptability. When you've done the work, you can adjust on the fly. You're not rigid. You're responsive. That flexibility makes opportunity less intimidating. Prepared people don't need perfect conditions. They make progress in imperfect ones. That ability attracts opportunity because it signals reliability. Preparation is an act of faith, not in luck, but in yourself. It's believing that the work you're doing now will matter later, even if you don't yet see how. Opportunity is attracted to momentum. Preparation creates momentum long before results appear. Preparation also deepens humility. You realize how much there is to learn. That humility keeps you growing instead of stagnating once opportunity arrives. People who skip preparation often crumble under pressure. People who prepare rise to it. Preparation doesn't guarantee opportunity, but lack of preparation guarantees missed opportunity. The world doesn't reward potential. It rewards readiness, and readiness is built quietly long before the moment arrives. Comfort is the enemy of greatness. That idea feels harsh at first because comfort is something we naturally seek. Comfort feels safe. It feels familiar. It feels earned. After all, who doesn't want ease, stability, and peace? But comfort becomes dangerous when it turns into a permanent residence instead of a temporary rest stop. The moment comfort becomes the goal, growth quietly stops. Comfort isn't loud or obvious. It doesn't announce that's holding you back. It whispers. It reassures you that things are good enough. It tells you that you've done plenty, that pushing further isn't necessary, that risk and discomfort would be irresponsible. Comfort rarely tells you to quit outright. It convinces you to stay. The problem isn't comfort itself. The problem is prolonged comfort. Growth lives in tension. Progress lives in challenge. When you stay comfortable too long, you stop adapting. And anything that stops adapting eventually becomes obsolete. Comfort dulls urgency. Comfort dulls urgency. When things are manageable, there's no pressure to improve. You stop asking hard questions. You stop evaluating your habits. You stop challenging your assumptions. Life becomes about maintenance instead of expansion. Greatness requires stretching beyond what feels natural. Every meaningful improvement demands discomfort. Learning something new, facing uncertainty, risking failure, enduring criticism, or pushing through resistance. Comfort resists all of that. It tells you to preserve what you have instead of pursuing what you could become. Comfort feeds fear subtly. It makes risk feel unnecessary and danger feel exaggerated. Convinces you that staying where you are is safer than finding out what you're capable of. Over time, that fear solidifies into routine. The most dangerous thing about comfort is how reasonable it sounds. I don't want to mess up what I built. And now isn't the right time. I'll push harder later. These statements don't sound like fear. They sound like wisdom. Often, they're fear wearing responsibility as a disguise. Comfort also shrinks perspective. When you're comfortable, you stop looking outward. You stop exposing yourself to new ideas, new people, and new challenges. Your world gets smaller, even if your life looks stable from the outside. Many people confuse peace with comfort. Peace comes from alignment, doing what matters even when it's hard. Comfort comes from avoiding, staying away from what's challenging. Peace energizes. Comfort sedates. Comfort encourages stagnation disguised as contentment. You tell yourself you're grateful and gratitude is important. But gratitude should coexist with ambition, not replace it. You can appreciate where you are without deciding to stay there forever. Comfort rewards the familiar, not the... You keep doing things the same way because it's what you know, even when it's no longer working. You stick to habits that once served you, but now limit you. Growth feels awkward. It exposes incompetence before competence. Comfort avoids that awkward stage, but without it, mastery never arrives. Comfort also delays hard conversations with yourself and with others. You avoid setting boundaries. You avoid asking for more. You avoid admitting dissatisfaction, and that avoidance accumulates into quiet resentment. The comfort zone doesn't collapse dramatically. It erodes potential slowly. You don't notice the lost day today. You notice it years later when you realize you stopped evolving. Comfort breeds complacency. Complacency breeds entitlement. Entitlement breeds disappointment. When comfort convinces you that effort is no longer required, reality eventually proves otherwise. Greatness demands discomfort because discomfort forces adaptation. Adaptation builds skill. Skill builds confidence. Confidence expands capacity. Comfort interrupts that chain. Comfort also lies about timing. It tells you there will always be a better moment to push yourself. But the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to leave. Comfort strengthens its grip over time. Most regrets don't come from doing something uncomfortable. They come from not doing it, from staying silent, from staying safe, from staying put. Comfort can feel like security, but it's fragile. The world changes, industries shift, relationships evolve, skills expire. If you rely on comfort, you're unprepared for disruption. Growth is the real security. Discomfort trains resilience. When you regularly do hard things, difficulty stops feeling threatening. You become adaptable. You trust yourself to figure things out. Comfort never builds that trust. Comfort also weakens hunger. Hunger is what drives learning, creativity, and innovation. When you're too comfortable, hunger disappears. Without hunger, effort fades. The pursuit of comfort often masquerades as self-care. Real self-care includes rest, but it also includes discipline, challenge, and honesty. Comfort alone is indulgence, not care. Comfort encourages comparison. You measure yourself against those around you instead of against your potential. As long as you're doing okay relative to others, you don't push further. Growth requires risk. Comfort avoids risk. And without risk, there is no reward worth having. The comfort zone feels like home, but it's a place you outgrow. Staying there doesn't preserve who you are. It diminishes who you could be. Discomfort doesn't mean chaos. It means intentional challenge. It means choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. It means doing what stretches you instead of what soothes you. Comfort tells you to protect your ego. Discomfort builds humility. Humility accelerates learning. Greatness is uncomfortable because it demands consistency, discipline, and delayed gratification. Comfort prefers ease, indulgence, and immediate relief. Comfort asks, oh, why risk it? Growth asks, oh, why not try? The people who achieve extraordinary things aren't fearless. They're comfortable being uncomfortable. They train themselves to move toward a challenge instead of away from it. Comfort feels good today. Growth pays off tomorrow. And tomorrow always arrives. If you want a life that expands instead of contract, you can't let comfort be the deciding factor. You have to let purpose be louder than ease and progress be more important than relief. Comfort will always be available. Greatness requires a choice. If it didn't work, adjust the effort, not the dream. That idea matters because most people quit the wrong thing. They abandon the vision instead of reworking the process. They confuse failure of execution with failure of purpose. And that confusion cost them years, sometimes a lifetime. Dreams are fragile in the hands of impatient people. The first setback feels like proof that the dream was unrealistic, immature, and naive. But setbacks rarely mean the destination is wrong. They usually mean the route needs work. Effort is variable. Dreams are directional. When something doesn't work, it's not automatically a sign that you should stop wanting it. It's a signal that what you tried wasn't enough, wasn't aligned, or wasn't effective. That distinction changes everything. Most people quit after their first plan fails. They assume success is linear. Try once, succeed quickly, move on. Real progress is iterative. It's trial, error, feedback, adjustment, repeat. People who succeed don't avoid failure. They expect it and use it. When you quit the dream, you lose clarity. When you adjust effort, you gain insight. Every failed attempt gives information about timing, skill gaps, strategy, discipline, and patience. That information is only useful if you stay in the game long enough to apply it. Dreams don't fail. Systems do. Strategies do. Habits do. Timelines do. But people personalize failure. They say, oh, maybe this isn't for me, when what they really mean is, what I tried didn't work. Those are not the same thing. Adjusting effort requires humility. You have to admit you didn't execute as well as you thought. You have to accept feedback without defensiveness. You have to resist the urge to protect your ego by walking away. Quitting is often easier than refining. Effort isn't just about working harder. Sometimes it's about working differently, smarter, more consistently, with better guidance, with better structure. Repeating the same mistake with more intensity isn't persistence, it's stubbornness. Adjustment is intelligent persistence. Many people abandon dreams because the dream asks more of them than they expected. More discipline, more patience, more sacrifice. Instead of renegotiating their effort, they renegotiate the dream downward. They tell themselves they didn't want it that badly anyway. That's how potential shrinks. Quietly, logically, and convincingly. Dreams often outgrow the version of you that created them. That doesn't mean the dream is wrong. It means you have to grow to match it. Adjusting effort is how that growth happens. Effort includes habits. If the habits don't support the dream will always feel out of reach. You don't lower the dream, you raise the standard of daily behavior. Effort includes environment. If your surroundings sabotage focus, consistency, or discipline, effort will leak. Adjusting effort may mean changing who you listen to, where you spend time, and what you tolerate. Effort includes skill. Wanting something doesn't automatically give you the ability to earn it. When things don't work, it may mean you need to learn more, practice more, or get better feedback. Skills are built, not wished into existence. Effort includes timing. Some failures aren't about capability, they're about readiness. Adjusting effort might mean slowing down to build a stronger foundation instead of rushing outcomes. People often romanticize quitting as a knowing when to let go. Sometimes that's true. But far more often, quitting is avoidance dressed up as wisdom. It's easier to say the dream wasn't meant to be than to admit you didn't adapt. The problem isn't dreaming big. The problem is expecting big dreams to require small effort. When something doesn't work, frustration rises. Frustration tempts you to make emotional decisions. Adjusting effort requires stepping back, analyzing what went wrong, and making intentional changes. That pause is uncomfortable, but it's where growth lives. Effort also includes resilience. Some results take longer than expected. Adjusting effort may mean extending your timeline instead of abandoning your goal. Patience part of effort. Many people quit right before the adjustment that would have worked. They're closer than they think, but too tired to pivot. Fatigue convinces them the dream is impossible when it's really just demanding. Effort includes honesty. You have to ask yourself whether you truly gave it what it required or whether you gave it what was convenient. That question is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. Dreams don't respond to intention. They respond to alignment. Alignment between what you say you want and what you do repeatedly. Here when alignment is off, results stall. The fix isn't less ambition, it's better alignment. Adjusting effort also means accepting that progress isn't always visible. You may be improving in ways that don't show up immediately. Quitting early erases that hidden progress. People who succeed long-term don't cling to one method, they're flexible. They adapt. They let go of ego and stay loyal to the outcome, not the approach. If you change the effort but keep the dream, you preserve meaning. If you quit the dream, you lose direction. Direction matters because it organizes your choices. Effort is within your control. Outcomes aren't always. Quitting the dream because of uncontrollable outcomes gives away agency. Adjusting effort reclaims it. Dreams evolve, they mature, they sharpen over time. Early versions are often vague. Through effort and adjustment, the dream becomes clearer and more realistic without becoming smaller. Failure is only final if you stop responding to it, otherwise instruction. Most breakthroughs come after multiple adjustments. Rarely does the first attempt work. That's not a flaw, that's the process. If you're willing to adjust effort repeatedly without letting go of the vision, resilience becomes part of who you are. You stop seeing obstacles as stop signs and start seeing them as feedback. Quitting the dream solves short-term discomfort. Adjusting effort builds long-term capability. The question after failure isn't a should I quit? It's what do I need to change? Dreams are supposed to challenge you. If they did, they wouldn't be worth pursuing. And the people who reach the other side aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who failed, adjusted, and kept going. Execution is the ultimate proof of belief. You can say you believe in something all day long, but belief that never turns into action is just a thought, not a conviction. Real belief shows up in behavior. It shows up in what you do when no one is watching, when it's inconvenient, when there's no guarantee of success, and when the outcome is uncertain. People often confuse belief with agreement. They agree with ideas. They like them. They resonate with them. They resonate with them. But agreement doesn't change lives. Execution does. You don't prove belief by nodding your head. You prove it by moving your feet. If you truly believe something matters, you act accordingly. You prioritize it. You make time for it. You organize your life around it. When action doesn't follow belief, it's worth questioning how deeply that belief really runs. Not to shame yourself, but to get honest. Execution removes ambiguity. It answers the question of what you actually value. You may say you believe in growth, but if you never practice, learn, or challenge yourself, your actions are saying something else. You may say you believe in your potential, but if you avoid effort, risk, or discipline, execution tells the truth. Belief lives in the mind. Execution lives in the body, and the body doesn't lie. It follows patterns. It responds to habit, not intention. That's why execution matters so much. It translates abstract belief into tangible behavior. People often wait for belief to feel strong before they act. But belief strengthens through action, not before it. Execution creates evidence. Evidence builds confidence. Confidence reinforces belief. The loop starts with doing, not thinking. Execution is uncomfortable because it exposes you. When you act, you risk being wrong. You risk failing publicly. You risk discovering that you have more to learn than you thought. Belief without execution keeps you safe from that exposure. But safety comes at the cost of growth. Many people protect their beliefs by not executing on them. As long as you don't act, you can tell yourself you will succeed if you tried. Execution removes that fantasy. It replaces imagination with reality. That's threatening to the ego, but essential for progress. Execution also reveals gaps. It shows you where belief is strong and where it's shallow. You might believe in your goal, but not in your ability to endure discomfort. You might believe in success, but not in the process required to earn it. Execution makes those gaps visible so they can be addressed. Belief without execution breeds frustration. You know what you want. You know what you believe is possible, but without action, that belief turns into pressure instead of progress. Execution releases that pressure by converting belief into movement. There's a reason execution is rare. It requires responsibility. Once you act, you can no longer blame ignorance or indecision. You're accountable to results. Many people prefer the comfort of belief because it feels virtuous without demanding responsibility. Execution is where excuses die. It doesn't matter how convincing your reasons are. If you don't act, nothing changes. Execution cuts through narratives and deals directly with reality. People admire belief. They respect execution. Belief inspires. Execution delivers. Execution delivers. Execution also forces prioritization. You can't execute on everything. You have to choose. That choice clarifies what you truly believe in. What you consistently execute on is what you genuinely value. Execution is not about intensity, it's about follow through. A small action done consistently proves belief more than grand declarations made once. Consistency turns belief into identity. You don't believe you're disciplined until you execute discipline daily. You don't believe you're resilient until you execute resilience under pressure. Belief becomes real when it's tested. Execution builds credibility with yourself first. Each time you act on what you say you believe, you strengthen self-trust. Each time you don't, that trust weakens. Over time, that internal credibility matters more than external validation. Execution also humbles belief. You realize that wanting something doesn't mean you understand it. Action reveals complexity. It forces learning. That humility sharpens belief instead of weakening it. Belief can exist in isolation. Execution requires interaction with reality, with resistance, with feedback. That interaction refines belief, making it more grounded and durable. Many people mistake passion for belief. Passion is emotional. Belief is demonstrated. Passion can disappear quickly. Execution continues long after emotion fades. Execution is where faith meets effort. You step forward without certainty, trusting that movement will create clarity. That trust is belief in its purest form. When you execute, you accept the possibility of failure. That acceptance proves belief more than success ever could. It says, if this matters enough for me to risk being wrong. Execution also exposes fear. Fear doesn't disappear through belief alone. It fades through action. Each execution weakens fear's authority. Belief that never gets executed becomes self-deception. You tell yourself you're committed, capable, and ready, but your actions contradict you. Execution realigns identity with behavior. You don't need perfect belief to execute. You need willingness. Belief often catches up later. Execution is the difference between those who talk about change and those who embody it, between those who admire ideas and those who live them. Execution doesn't require confidence. It creates it. It doesn't require certainty. It produces learning. It doesn't require permission. It demands responsibility. Belief feels internal. Execution is visible. And visibility invites accountability. That accountability sharpens focus and increases effort. Execution also creates momentum. Once you start moving, continuing becomes easier. Belief alone doesn't generate momentum. Action does. The world doesn't respond to belief. It responds to execution. Opportunities open to those who act, not those who intend. Execution turns dreams into plans, plans into habits, into outcomes. Belief is the seed. Execution is the soil, the water, and the work. Without execution, belief stays theoretical. If you want to know what you truly believe, don't listen to what you say, watch what you do. Because in the end, execution is belief made visible. No one is coming to save you. That truth can feel heavy when you first hear it, because many people are quietly waiting for help, for recognition, for circumstances to change, for someone to notice their effort and step in. That waiting feels reasonable. After all, everyone needs support sometimes. But there's a difference between accepting help and depending on rescue. When your life is built around the hope that someone else will fix what you avoid facing, you give away your agency. The idea that no one is coming isn't meant to isolate you. It's meant to wake you up. It's meant to pull you out of passivity and put responsibility back where it belongs, in your hand. Because the moment you stop expecting rescue is the moment you start building power. Waiting feels safer than acting. When you wait, you're not at risk of failing. You're not exposed. You can tell yourself that once conditions improve, you'll move. Once you have more time, more money, more support, more clarity, then you'll start. But those conditions rarely arrive on their own. They're usually created through action, not patience. Many people don't realize how much of their life is built around silent expectations. Expectations that someone will explain things, that someone will open doors, that someone will make it easier, that someone will make it easier, that someone will understand without being told. These expectations feel natural, but they quietly weaken initiative. When you believe someone is coming to save you, you delay ownership. You delay decisions. You delay responsibility. You stay in a holding pattern, hoping the situation changes before you have to. And the longer you stay there, the harder it becomes to move. The world doesn't reward potential. It responds to action. And action doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't wait for perfect timing. It doesn't wait for someone else to validate your readiness. Action assumes responsibility even when conditions are imperfect. The belief that no one is coming forces honesty. It makes you ask difficult questions. What am I avoiding? What am I blaming? What am I blaming? What am I hoping someone else will handle for me? Those questions are uncomfortable, but they're clarifying. People often confuse support with salvation. Support helps you move faster or farther. Salvation implies you don't have to move at all. That second mindset creates dependency. The first creates growth. No one coming to save you doesn't mean you have to do everything alone. It means you can't outsource ownership. You can accept guidance, collaboration, and help, but you still have to carry responsibility for your life. When you stop waiting for rescue, urgency increases. You realize that time is moving whether you act or not. That realization sharpens focus. It pushes you to make decisions instead of postponing them. Many people remain stuck because they're waiting for confidence before acting, but confidence is rarely given. It's built. It's built by doing hard things without guarantees. No one hands you confidence. You earn it through action. Waiting also keeps you tied to stories about fairness. You tell yourself that once things are fair, you'll try harder. But fairness isn't a prerequisite for progress. It never has been. People who move forward do so despite unfairness, not after it disappears. When no one is coming to save you, excuses lose power. You can't say, if only someone had helped me. You shift to, what can I do with what I have? That shift changes behavior immediately. Self-rescue doesn't mean dramatic transformation overnight. Start small. It starts with decisions you've been avoiding, conversations you've been postponing, habits you've been neglecting. Ownership shows up in these moments, not in grand gestures. Many people want accountability, but what they really want is pressure from the outside. They want someone else to push them off. External pressure can help temporarily, but internal standards last longer. When you accept that no one is coming, you build those standards yourself. Rescue fantasies often hide fear, fear of failure, fear of responsibility, fear of discovering that change is harder than imagined. Waiting feels easier than finding out what it actually takes. When you stop waiting, you reclaim momentum. Momentum doesn't come from knowing. It comes from doing. Even imperfect action creates feedback. Feedback creates learning. Learning creates progress. No one coming also means no one is coming to stop you. That's the other side of the truth. There's no gatekeeper deciding when you're allowed to begin. There's no authority holding you back. Most limitations are internal, reinforced by hesitation. People often stay stuck because they're waiting for permission they don't need. Permission to start small. Permission to change direction. Permission to try and fail. Permission to outgrow who they've been. That permission doesn't come externally, it's claim. It's claim. When you stop expecting rescue, you stop telling yourself stories that keep you comfortable. You replace them with questions that move you forward. What's the next step? What can I control? What am I willing to do consistently? Self-rescue builds resilience. Each time you solve a problem instead of waiting for help, you strengthen self-trust. That trust compounds. Over time, challenges feel less intimidating because you've proven you can handle them. People who wait for rescue often feel resentful. Resentment builds when expectations aren't met. When you stop expecting others to fix things, resentment fades. You become more focused on solutions than on blame. No one is coming to save you from discomfort. Growth requires you to sit in it, work through it, and learn from it. Avoiding discomfort only prolongs it. When you accept full responsibility, your options expand. You're no longer limited by what others are willing to do. You're limited only by what you're willing to try. The idea that no one is coming can feel lonely at first, but it eventually becomes empowering. You realize you're not waiting anymore. You're building, you're choosing, you're acting. People who stop waiting don't suddenly have easier lives. They have more honest ones. They stop wasting energy hoping for a rescue and redirect that energy into effort. Self-rescue doesn't mean you never ask for help. It means you don't wait to move until help arrives. You move and allow help to meet you along the way. Waiting keeps you in the past. Action pulls you into the present, and change only happens in the present. No one coming to save you is not a sentence. It's a release. It frees you from expectation, delay, and dependency. It tells you the truth. Your life is in your hands. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. And once you accept that, you stop waiting for the moment and you become the one who creates it. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your standards. That's a hard truth for a lot of people because goals feel exciting and standards feel demanding. Goals live in the future. Standards live in the present. Goals are what you hope for. Standards are what you tolerate, accept, and repeat every day. Most people don't fail because they aim too low. They fail because they accept too little from themselves. You can want more money, better health, stronger relationships, and deeper purpose. But if your standards don't change, your results won't either. Life will always move toward what you consistently allow. What you tolerate becomes normal. What becomes normal becomes permanent. Standards are not what you say you believe in. They are what you enforce. They show up in how you speak to yourself, how you manage your time, how you respond to pressure, and what you allow to slide when no one is checking. People often confuse standards with perfection. They are not the same. Perfection is unrealistic. Standards are non-negotiable. They define the minimum level of behavior you accept from yourself, regardless of mood, motivation, or circumstances. Low standards don't look like fair at first. They look like small compromises, skipping one workout, delaying one difficult conversation, letting one excuse slide, saying just this once or over and over again. Over time, those compromises shape identity. High steps are uncomfortable because they force consistency. You don't get to negotiate with yourself every day. You don't get to decide whether you'll show up. You've already decided. That removes drama and replaces it with discipline. Most people live reactively because their standards are flexible. They adjust effort based on how they feel. But feelings change constantly. Standards don't. When you raise your standards, you stop asking, what do I feel like doing? And start asking, well, what does the standard require? That shift alone changes behavior. High standards don't mean you're harsh with yourself. They mean you're honest. You stop pretending that average effort deserves exceptional results. You stop rewarding inconsistency with excuses. So many people say they're stuck, but what they're really experiencing is the result of standards they've outgrown but haven't replaced. They want more, but they still live by rules designed for less. Raising standards often means disappointing the version of you that was comfortable. It means letting go of old routines, old identities, and sometimes old relationships. Not because those things are bad, but because they no longer align. Standards also determine boundaries. If your standard is peace, you won't tolerate constant chaos. If your standard is growth, you won't tolerate stagnation. If your standard is self-respect, you won't tolerate environments that drain or diminish you. People with low standards rely on motivation. People with high standards rely on structure. Motivation fluctuates. Structure holds. Raising standards doesn't require a dramatic announcement. It shows up quietly in decision, going to bed earlier, preparing instead of improvising, saying no instead of overcommitting, doing the task properly instead of rushing through it. Your environment reflects your standards. Your schedule reflects your standards. Your results reflect your standards. If something feels out of alignment, look there first. Many people believe they need more confidence before raising standards. The opposite is true. Confidence grows when you consistently meet the standards you set. Each kept promise strengthens self-trust. Low standards create internal tension. You know what you're capable of, but your behavior doesn't match. High standards reduce that tension because actions align with values. Raising standards also changes how you respond to failure. Failure becomes feedback, not identity. You don't spiral, you adjust. The standard remains intact even when execution needs improvement. People with high standards don't avoid rest, they define it. Rest becomes intentional, not escapism. Recovery performance instead of replacing effort. Standards shape habits, shape identity. Identity shapes destiny. That change starts with what you refuse to accept. You don't need to raise standards in every area at once. That usually backfires. Start with one behavior you no longer negotiate, one commitment you keep even when it's inconvenient. Over time, that single raised standard creates momentum. Momentum builds evidence. Evidence builds belief. High standards also attract alignment. When you're clear about what you expect from yourself, you become clearer about what you accept from others. Relationships improve, not because people change, but because you do. Raising standards can feel lonely at first. Not everyone will understand. Some will feel challenged just by your consistency. That discomfort is often misinterpreted as judgment, but it's usually comparison. You don't raise standards to prove anything. You raise them to live in integrity with who you're becoming. Standards remove the need for constant decision-making. You don't debate whether to show up, you do. That mental simplicity creates focus and reduces stress. Many people exhaust themselves trying to do more, when what they really need is to accept less of what doesn't serve them. Raising standards is as much about subtraction as addition. You can't outperform your standards long term. You might spike temporarily, but eventually behavior returns to baseline. That's why lasting change always involves redefining the baseline. High standards don't mean life gets easier. They mean life gets clearer. You waste less energy negotiating with yourself and more energy executing. When you raise your standards, excuses lose their appeal. They no longer match the identity you're building. You don't argue with them, you dismiss them. Your future doesn't require new personality. It requires new standards applied consistently over time. Every level of life has an entry requirement. Standards are the price of admission. If you want a different level, you have to pay with different behavior. Raising standards is an act of self-respect. It says, I take my life seriously enough to demand more from myself. And once you do, your life begins to rise to meet you.